Hi, and welcome to another episode of This Week in Plymouth. My name is Derek Brindisi. I'm your host and your town manager. This afternoon, we have our Director of Public Health, Karen Keane, with us. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, so we were supposed to, Karen, you and I were supposed to have this conversation probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So we're a little late. Memorial Day just passed, but as the Director of Public Health, there's a lot of things that we can talk about as we head into the hot summer months. Mm-hmm. And so really this session is really to try to give good information, good health prevention information out there to the public, so they kind of are reminded of the things, the do's and don'ts of the summer season. And like we used to say back in Worcester, if it's predictable, it's preventable. So we can predict something's going to happen. Like if you don't wear your sunscreen, you're probably going to get burnt. Those types of things we can prevent it, right? So Karen, let's talk about something that I've always liked to talk a lot about in my former days as the Director of Public Health in Worcester, is really around like vector-borne diseases. And in the Worcester area, we were mostly focused on West Nile virus in particular, and certainly tick-borne diseases like Lyme disease. But being in the South Shore, there's other mosquitoes that we're worried about that carry triple E. So can we kind of talk about triple E, West Nile virus a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So last summer, 2 summers ago, we had a pretty rough summer with triple E and with West Nile virus. Definitely some animal cases and a couple of human cases as well. Last summer, we didn't have any human cases and only a few animal cases. So this summer, we're still looking to see what that's going to show. Right now, we don't really have any idea. We're always in close contact with the epidemiologists from the state to see what they're predicting. But and Dr. Catherine Brown always meets with us too to kind of give us an idea of what to look forward to. And we also get reports. So anytime that something is ever reported for this area, not only for Plymouth, the town of, but Plymouth, the county, it's always reported on our webpage, and also I bring it up in my director's report at the Board of Health meetings, which are the second and fourth Wednesday of the month.
So you're putting on the town website the I guess the risk levels for mosquito-borne diseases. So again, triple E, very serious disease. You can contract it and be infected by a bite of a mosquito. Has a 50% fatality rate, I think I remember. The West Nile virus, not as fatal, but has symptomology like the flu, right?
Exactly.
And so triple E, I know, again, it's not a central Mass, Western Mass type of virus. It's more focused in the Cape and in the Plymouth area. And so you said last year, I think primarily I would guess was we had such a dry, hot season that we didn't have the cases that you said that we didn't have last year.
Correct.
Is that right?
Absolutely right. One of the things that you really need to think about, especially for folks at home too, is if you don't want to have mosquitoes come to your house, don't have freestanding water.
Right.
It's the biggest connection between how mosquitoes are bred. They like to lay their eggs in water. So I always tell folks, look in your backyard. Do you have a wheelbarrow? Do you have a little kiddie pool? Do you have some other buckets or something that you just kind of left out when it rained because you didn't think anything of it? You got to think of it.
Sure.
Because that's just going to be a breeding ground for the mosquitoes, and that's not what you want to have happen.
No, that's a great point. I totally forgot about that. So standing water is a mosquito breeding area. And again, last year, we didn't have as many mosquitoes because we had such a dry season. But even like old discarded tires that are in someone's backyard, a perfect area for mosquito breeding. So that's one good way to mitigate the potential infection of mosquitoes is reduce their breeding areas.
Right.
But what are other things that folks can do to try to prevent being infected?
Sure. One of the number one things that people can do are their clothing. Make sure you have shoes and socks. Wear long pants if you're going to go outside. Long sleeve shirts if you know you're going to be around an area anytime after dusk, where mosquitoes are usually the most prominent. Clothing should be made of tightly woven material because the little mosquitoes can't get in there, so it's kept away from the skin. Also, repair any doors and screens that
Sure.
you have. You don't want them to come inside your house. The water is going to help with the outside,
Right.
but you got to think about the inside.
Good point.
So take a look around the house, repair those screens, look at your windows, your screen doors, anything that you may have let go during the winter. Now it's time to take a look at those and really get them repaired.
Yep, and that's a good point. So I know there's other types of prevention measures like the spray. I see parents spray them. Is that something that you would recommend?
Well, Plymouth County actually has Plymouth County mosquito control.
Okay.
And Plymouth is part of that program where there is actual aerial spraying. And we always list the streets that are going to be sprayed the night before in case people want to take in certain pollinating plants because they don't want those to be impacted for the bees.
Right.
But then there's no harm to other domestic animals or anything like that. So that's sprayed, and then you can always hire additional companies if you wanted to come out and actually spray down your yard for both ticks and mosquitoes. Now the companies are doing both. So, but I think if you just take those precautions, I think you're going to be well on your way to protecting yourself.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Spraying for adult mosquitoes only really knocks down the adult mosquitoes, and they can continue to breed. And using those types of chemicals can be very controversial at times too. But again, there is DEET that you can apply to the body to repel mosquitoes.
In fact, you should look for any body spray you're using to make sure that it does have that in there.
Sure.
And there's also permethrin treated clothing also exists. If you really were like say a hiker or a camper, people are starting to buy those types of clothing that they're treated with, and that can even still protect you after multiple washings. So if you were really an outdoorsy person, that might be recommended as well.
And you mentioned, Karen, ticks. So again, tick-borne diseases, actually, if you look at the numbers as a whole, much more prevalent than mosquito-borne diseases. Lyme disease is, certainly you can get an acute infection, but I think more concerning is that Lyme disease has can have long-term chronic conditions that I'm really worried about folks being bitten by ticks that are carrying Lyme disease.
Right, absolutely. So there are definitely some things that folks can do in order to avoid getting bit by a tick. So don't let a tick make you sick is sort of what our little motto is.
Okay.
Remember to check yourself. Anytime that you go outside, check yourself for ticks when you come back in. And if you've been outside with somebody else, take turns. Have someone take a look at your back. You can take a look at their back. If you have children, make sure someone is checking them from head to toe when they come back in from the outdoors. Ticks love shady, damp areas. And what we're finding is they're also loving brick walkways
Really?
and retaining walls because they have little spaces in between the nice cold stones. And they're actually finding that they like being there. So it's not just so much walking through the lawn anymore or hiking in through the woods. It could be something as simple as you're sitting on your little brick walkway, just chatting, and all of a sudden your little friends are going to come up. So you got to be careful about that too. Again, use repellents. Wear light-colored clothing so that you can see the ticks on the clothing if they happen to be on top of your clothes. And if you are exposed to a tick and you believe you have a tick bite, and you're experiencing any type of flu symptoms like you mentioned, it is imperative that you seek medical treatment, because that's what we're going to start running into. This, you've been exposed to a tick, and now there's illness that might be coming. Now, tick-borne illnesses are a reportable illness.
Okay.
So through our MAVEN database in the state of Massachusetts, I will know what type of ticks disease we have in Plymouth. So right now I can tell you that we had a little bit of a spike early in the spring. It's sort of leveling off, but we're keeping our eye on it as we go further into the summer season. So we can report those numbers as well at the Board of Health meetings on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month.
And when you say ticks, are you referring to Lyme disease in particular?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's reported to us how many cases we have. We don't do a lot of follow-up. It's more of just an acknowledgement. But what we do can do, and this is part of why epidemiology is so important, we can start taking a look at where are those people, what area of Plymouth are those cases coming from?
Right.
Is it all over the place? Well, then that's one thing. Is it, all over the baseball fields? That's one thing. But if it's really strongly in one area of town, that might be something that we need to
Right.
address.
So you can look at like a map of hot spots throughout the community to see if there's certain neighborhoods that were getting more reported cases of, say, Lyme disease.
Absolutely.
Which, to me, would suggest that the Board of Health and yourself as the Director of Public Health could be very targeted with some of your interventions and your strategies.
Absolutely. Yep. Especially, and I work with the rec department. Ann Slessor, who's our Director of Recreation. I work with her if we do see that something's happening, perhaps in one of our fields or in that area of town that may have fields. I'll tell her, keep a close look on the kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Really take a look at them. We're seeing a lot of activity in this area.
And one just so folks are aware, if they were to be bitten by a tick and they were infected by Lyme disease, it has that prominent like bullseye look, correct?
It absolutely does. Yep, you'll see a little circle, a little teeny tiny dot, and then you'll see a bullseye around the little teeny tiny dot, and that tells you that you really need to seek medical treatment.
Got it. So
Yep.
really
and
good.
the sooner the better.
Right. Good information.
Yeah,
regarding,
and we're also going to have more information on June 14th. A gentleman named Blake Dinius, who is a tick expert, will be coming to our Board of Health meeting to do a presentation all about ticks. It's more than you would ever want to know about ticks, but it's an amazing presentation. So if people want to tune in, they can watch that live, or they could re-watch it on PAC TV.
Oh, great. I didn't realize that. So that is, honestly, ticks scare me the most, and I know I feel like mosquitoes get a lot of attention in the media, but ticks is so prominent, and it can be chronic, so it's great that the Board of Health is hosting a seminar just on ticks alone.
Yep.
So so we'll move off of insects right now, but we just went through the Memorial Day holiday a couple of days ago, and a lot of cookouts, a lot of barbecues, and there's a lot of concerns that we have as public health professionals around foodborne illness. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The number one most important, well, a couple of important things when we're dealing with food safety, and especially in the summertime, grilling outside. We want to make sure your food is cooked appropriately. So please, everyone use a meat thermometer to ensure that the temperature of the meats that you're cooking are what they need to be. For an example, if you're cooking hamburger on your grill and you use a meat thermometer, that internal temperature should be at least 160 degrees before you serve it to somebody else. Now, the second thing is keep hot food hot and keep cold food cold. So we don't want hot food to get cold and then be reheated, because that temperature change brings in the possibility for food contamination and food illness.
Sure.
And you don't want cold things to get hot, because that never works anyway, because that's just not what should happen with temperature control. So anytime you have leftovers, say at your family function, you want to refrigerate any leftovers as soon as possible. So if you remember the three big things, then I think you'll be well on your way to having a safe family cookout or neighborhood cookout or other event.
Yeah, and I think we could all share stories of going to a cookout and there's that potato salad with mayonnaise that sat out in the sun for 4 hours.
Oh,
and
yes,
so,
we did. In fact, we had a situation like that. It happened at Morton Pond. A group of folks called me. They thought that they were getting sick from the water at Morton Pond, and we'll talk about that a little bit in the future here today, but we do test the water at Morton Pond, so I knew the water was fine.
Yep.
So upon asking them some questions, I found out that they were having sort of a little family reunion. They were there from morning to night, and they left that food out the entire time.
wow.
So I said, well, I think I know what happened to your group. I think you had a little bit of foodborne illness more than anything else from the water. And I explained to them the importance of temperature control in the future.
Yeah, it's super important. Again, I think people just forget to realize that the temperature control is super important. But the other thing too, before we move off of food, is hand washing too.
Oh,
Norovirus
absolutely.
is the most prominent foodborne illness, and what folks don't realize it's contaminated from unsanitary hands and not washing your hands.
Absolutely true. That is why it's so imperative when we do our food inspections for all of our restaurants here in Plymouth that we always observe the staff. We want to make sure if the staff is using the restroom that they're washing their hands, that there's signage in the restroom that says all staff must wash hands before returning to work. Always encouraging people to wash their hands at all points. It's really the beginning of all safety. You know, it really came to light during COVID with hand washing and using hand sanitizer. But that's been the foundation for self-care from the beginning.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, you think about all the different diseases you just named. It all circles back to just keeping your hands clean, washing them on a regular basis, keeping them hands.
Yeah,
because they're just
keeping them away from your face.
Yeah,
yeah.
Your hands are a big vector. That's
Yeah,
a big vector of disease.
Certainly are.
So I guess the point of that is wash your hands when you're handling food, especially for other people, as much as you can. So sun safety, it's going to be hot. We've already had a couple 80-degree days. I think at the end of this week, they're looking at a 90-degree day.
They are.
There's a lot that we have to be mindful of. One thing about living in New England when it comes to sun safety is that we quickly forget once we hit fall and winter, and then Memorial Day rolls around, and we're back out in the sun and forgetting all the things that we learned from the year prior.
Absolutely. We're back in our gardens, we're back in our backyard, we're back at sporting events. And with New England weather, sometimes when we're up and down, we don't really think, oh, here's a nice warm day, I need to prepare for that.
Right.
It's just like, yeah, there's a nice warm day, I'm going to go out and do everything that I want to do. Well, here's what you really need to do before you go outside, which is, of course, use sunscreen.
Yep.
The most important, you want a sun protective factor that both protects against UVA rays and UVB rays. Now, the UVA rays, or ultraviolet rays, that causes skin aging, and nobody wants that. So you definitely want to protect yourself against that. But the UVB rays are the ones that are associated with the actual sunburns.
Gotcha.
And no one wants to get a sunburn either, because sunburn is skin damage.
Right.
You know, and no one wants that to happen. So we have to make sure that we're using sunscreen all the time, and to remember to reapply that. If you're doing an outdoor activity and you're sweating, especially if you're in the water and you're swimming, to remember to reapply if you get wet. That's really important. Also, folks should wear a hat. It's really important to wear a hat, especially perhaps one with a wider brim that protects your face from the sun. That's important. Also, it helps with your ears and your neck. Ears are the #1 place for people that get skin cancer.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so because we cover our faces with sunscreen, we might put a baseball hat on our heads, but the one thing that's still out, whether we're golfing or working in the garden or playing with the kids, are our ears.
Good point.
So put some sunscreen on those if the hat doesn't go all the way around to actually protect you with some shade. So remember to put the sunscreen on your ears.
Well, so two things regarding just sun protection and sun safety is just being hydrated.
Oh.
So I know you covered, cover up with that.
Pack a refillable water bottle.
Right, yeah, exactly. So talk a little bit about just making sure, like, being hydrated.
Being hydrated is so important. Our body needs water. We can go days, actually, without food. We can go very little time without water, because we're so much part of water ourselves. So it's so important that no matter what you're doing, even cold, hot, whatever the season, but especially in warmer weather, because we're sweating. And when we're sweating, we're actually losing water.
Right.
What that means is, even if you're working out at the gym and you're sweating, your body is losing that water that's so important for it to be healthy and to do what you need it to do. So pack a refillable water bottle. Take along that water bottle with you wherever you go, and make sure everyone in your family and all the kids have one too.
I was going to say, remember the children, because they need water too. And for the dog lovers out there, make sure you bring them
because sometimes kids are so busy, they don't want to stop doing what they're doing.
Right.
But you have to make sure that they always stop and they have some water.
Yep, really good point. And then just before we get off the sun issue, one thing I've noticed, again, being from Central Mass and coming here, is it could be a moderately cool day or maybe kind of hazy, and you forget to apply the sunscreen, and then next thing you know, it's like I spent 2 hours out here, and those UV rays you talked about are still coming through. It's still coming through. So even those cloudy, hazy days, still make sure you wear the sunscreen.
Yes, absolutely. So those are some of the worst days, because you really don't think of it. You don't see the sun brightly shining in the sky, but what's happening is it's still impacting your skin because of those rays are getting through. So when you go outside, it's just important to apply sunscreen.
Yep, good points. So moving on, we have lots. What do we have? Over 360 ponds in this community, a number of public beaches. Can you kind of describe the different things we have going on at beaches and ponds?
Sure. So we have 3 types of beaches in Plymouth. One is public, meaning it's open to the general public. So those beaches are staffed with our lifeguards that work for the town. Semi-public are those that are open to individuals that have a common access, meaning they may have a neighborhood association. And so there's a beach that belongs to that neighborhood association. Or they may have a condo association, and there's a beach involved with that condo association. And then private is anything else. It's a beach that's part of your home. It's not open to the public. It's not, that anyone could just come in and use it. It is part of what you own, and so that is a private beach.
Sure.
So here, we in Plymouth, as the town, are responsible for testing the public beaches.
Okay.
However, all of those semi-public beaches also have to be tested, but it's the responsibility of either the homeowners association, the condo association, the neighborhood group, whoever has taken responsibility to do that testing. But here at the town hall, in the Department of Public Health, we are the keeper of record.
Gotcha.
So we know what beaches are out there, how that they're being tested. They need to be tested at least once a week. We're keeping track of that. We're reaching out to folks if we're not seeing that come in. And then at the end of the season, we do one big report back to the state of Massachusetts.
And when you say testing, what you're referring to is weekly, the health department goes out there and is testing the water at those public beaches for bacteria.
Absolutely.
And making sure that the bacteria doesn't exceed a certain level, because if it exceeds that regulatory status, then we have to close the beach because it's unsafe to swim. Is that correct?
That is 100% accurate. We have multiple sample spots at all of our beaches, so it's not just one sample spot in a large beach. We have multiple sample spots. They're collected once a week. They're analyzed. They're checked for bacteria levels. I get a report right back from the lab that tells me what the levels are, and then we send out an email to our beach group that lets them know it's all good, it's a go, everyone tested fine this week. We very rarely have a problem, but we have a couple of times, but very rarely, we'll make sure the signage is posted that says this beach is closed until further notice. We will retest, and we will wait for the results of that test to come. It could come on a weekend, and that's fine. The lab always can reach out to me 7 days a week, and as soon as I get the results, I'll tell the beach committee, the beach group, that is ready to be open again, and we'll take the sign down.
And if there's a public beach, we post it on the website, right?
We definitely
so
do.
If we had to close one of our freshwater ponds, like Morton Park, we'd post it on the website, there'll be no swimming today because of high bacteria counts.
Correct. It'll be posted on the town's website. We have a beach section on the Public Health Department's website.
Okay.
It's also actual physical signs will be posted at the location, so that people will know, even if they get there, even if they don't know prior to arriving, they'll at least know when they get there that section of the beach is closed.
And I know there's a lot of testing, so I probably won't cover them all, but so Fresh Pond would be one, Morton Park would be another one, that pond, right? White Horse Beach, is that?
White Horse Beach has three
locations?
3 locations. Plymouth Beach has 3 locations.
Okay. What about Nelson Park?
Nelson Park is tested. Nelson Park was not a part of our original testing, say about 4 years ago. But when we put in the splash pad that was at Nelson Park, we noticed that families were using the splash pad, but then also going over and kind of wading in the water that was there.
Sure.
So in order to make sure that that area was safe, we added that to our testing.
Oh yeah, that's very smart. What about Stevens Field? I know it's going to be closed this summer, but is that
we do not test
Stevens Field?
No.
Okay, yeah, so that makes sense. And so Morton Park, Fresh Pond, do we do hedges? Do we test hedges?
We test hedges.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Good. Those are great places. So again, the health department is ensuring in this situation that the waters are clean and they're able for our folks to swim in so they don't get sick. But what about safety when you're swimming in the water? What safety precautions can we talk a little bit about?
Sure. So always supervise young children around water. And one of the things we look for too in our recreational camps, because we have several recreational camps here in Plymouth, we always make sure during their inspection that we have a whole section that has to do with water safety.
Okay.
We have to make sure that everyone has a personal flotation device available to them, that it fits them, they know how to put it on and take it off, that the staff is trained in how to put it on and take it off for a personal flotation device. And everyone needs, this is for recreational camps, everyone needs to be swim tested.
Okay.
And then they're put in certain groups depending upon the level of their ability to swim.
And that law there about swim tests is probably only 5-6 years
That is
old.
correct.
It's not that old.
It's not that old at all, but it's important. And It's
Right.
really important. And it keeps our young folks safe who are in a camp situation. Now, if you're not in a camp situation, it's still so important to supervise young children around any type of water. And you never want to swim alone. I know people that get tempted sometimes to do that. It's really not safe to swim alone. You should always be aware of your local forecasts. Take a look at the weather. You don't want to be swimming or on a beach if there's going to be lightning.
Right.
It's a very dangerous situation if there's lightning in the air. So if you hear thunder coming, a storm coming, it's probably time to pick yourself up off the beach and head home. Also pay attention to our lifeguards.
Right.
Our lifeguards have up-to-the-minute information on what's happening currently, both for the weather and on the water situation. So you want to look for any posted instructions or warnings like we talked about if the beach is closed. That will be a posted warning saying this beach is closed because of high levels of bacteria. It'll be retested, and then upon testing in the positive way, then we'll take the sign down.
What about like currents or like riptide?
Yep. The lifeguards have different flags that they use.
Okay.
That they'll show if there's a strong current. There's a flag they'll use to show that there may be shark activity.
Sure.
So that the lifeguard is full of knowledge. So you can always feel free to go up to the lifeguard at any one of our beaches and ask them for information about what the beach status is for that day.
Great. So, Karen, we covered a lot of information. And
Don't forget 62 pools in Plymouth.
62 pools. Those must be
Semi-public
semi-public.
pools. Yeah.
So those have to be tested as well.
Yep.
And you guys are tracking all that as
We
well.
are.
So the pool
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
We could probably spend another hour or so just talking about ways to stay healthy, ways to prevent injury and illness during the summer months, because there's so much that's happening. And so this is just kind of a little bit of 40,000-foot flyover
Absolutely.
of
Yep.
everything we want folks to pay close attention to. And as we talked earlier, if we can predict it, we can prevent it, right? So if we can if we know we're going to get burnt with not using sunscreen, put the sunscreen on, and that'll help you as well. So, Karen, I appreciate you coming on this afternoon.
you.
We'll definitely have to have you back maybe towards the end of the summer. We can talk about how things went.
Sure.
Hopefully we can say no injuries, no illnesses.
Right.
We
Best
didn't see
summer
much
ever.
mosquito activity, right? So we're all looking forward to a very safe and healthy summer this summer.
We are
so
too. Yep.
thank you for all that you do. And I know we have a lot going on in your department over the next few months. Got a public health excellence grant that's coming out. Maybe we should bring the chairman, Mr. Barry Pontman, on as well to talk about that excellence
He would
grant.
love to do that.
Yeah, so we definitely
Yep.
can do that. And so I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon on this episode of This Week in Plymouth. If you want more information on everything that Karen has talked about, just go to our website at www.plymouth-ma.gov. Thank you, and see you next week.